All right, thanks so much, guys, for coming. We're doing circulatory system today, lecture 5 already. So on Monday we'll be doing review, and then the Friday next week will be the first midterm. Circulatory system. We're going to start off with the functions. I was looking at the LensMark modules, and it seems you had functions a little bit with the functions, the circulatory system. But basically, we have the systemic vessels. Okay, systemic vessels. Systemic vessels come from the left side of the heart, right? Via the aorta, provide all the body tissues. So left ventricle to all the body parts. All right, and then the pulmonary. I'm just going to still call it palm. The pulmonary circulation leaves the right side, right? Via the pulmonary trunk. Okay, today we'll be doing the heart in the lab, so we'll be able to see these blood vessels. And then goes to the lungs, picks up oxygen, drops of carbon dioxide, and then comes back to the left side, right? Okay, so to lungs. So these two systems, the systemic vessels and the pulmonary vessels, make up the peripheral circulation. What's that?
What does that say? Left.
Oh yeah, left ventricle. So through the aorta, going to the rest of the body, the blood leaves the heart through the aorta on the left side. So that's left ventricle, left ventricle, sorry. And then it goes to the body parts, all the body parts, comes back through the right side, through the superior and inferior vena cava, right? And then the pulmonary vessels leave the heart via the right side, right, through the pulmonary trunk, which then becomes the pulmonary artery, and then comes back to the left side. So all that is what makes the peripheral circulation. So having said that, what will be the functions of the peripheral? I've already said all the functions as I was describing these two, networks of blood vessels. Okay. The first one is obviously to carry the blood, right? It's gonna have to carry the blood and conduct it through. All right. And then what did I say the blood does when it goes to the lungs? Picks up oxygen, drops off carbon dioxide, right? So that's and then in other body parts like the intestines, the digestive system picks up nutrients, all right, and then drops off at the cells in the systemic circulation. And then in the kidneys, what does the blood do? Pick up metabolic waste, right? So all that. So the functions of the peripheral circulation are more intuitive than anything else. Okay, let's think of what your body needs, from the oxygen to the nutrients, and that's what it does. All right. So an exchange of gases. You transport substances. What are some of the substances that are transported in the blood? Yeah, oxygen. We kind of sort of covered that when we were up here, but we're talking of other things now. But yeah, oxygen definitely. What are some of the other things that are transported in blood? We've covered nutrients already, and then gases. We covered that. What else? What else is covered in blood? What is that all the body does? Pick up. Yeah, exactly. Hormones, because these are very important in regulating the reactions going on in the body and everything. So hormones and things like that. Okay, and some other compounds like eicosanoids, that are hormone-like substances, prostaglandins and things like that. Okay, so transport substances like hormones. Okay, if I ask about these functions of the peripheral circulation, I would need you to kind of give me examples of what you're talking about. Okay, and make it nice and complete. All right, and then helps to regulate blood pressure. How does the peripheral circulation regulate blood pressure?
Vasoconstriction and dilation.
Exactly. Vasoconstriction and dilation, because the arteries have muscle in them. So if you make the, in high blood pressure conditions, what happens? Vasodilation, vasoconstriction.
Constriction.
In high blood pressure?
It becomes like a hose.
I'm saying when you have high blood pressure, what's your body response? Does it dilate the blood vessels? Does it constrict the blood vessels? When you have high blood pressure, it dilates. Why? Because the more volume you have, the less the pressure. Because all what pressure is the force the blood is exerting on the walls of the blood vessels. That's all it is. So if you have more area, it's going to exert less pressure and less blood pressure. So if you have low blood pressure, then it will constrict the blood vessels, such as when you have a traumatic injury. Somebody shoots you, which they shouldn't, and you start bleeding, right? Then your body is going to constrict the blood vessels. It's going to speed up heart rate. It's going to do all sorts of things,
Wow.
to get you. So one of the things the peripheral system will do is to constrict the blood vessels to try and increase the pressure. Okay, so good. So you should be able to explain all these functions. Don't just say blood. If I ask about these functions and then I'll tell you to explain, just say okay, transport substances, and then you just stop there, or just regulate blood pressure. You stop there. You get half the point if you do that. Okay, so I want you to kind of explain these things. Direct blood flow to tissues. How does it direct blood flow? The network of blood vessels, and you have capillaries in all the parts of your body. And the capillary network is extensive, up to like 60,000 miles of blood vessels in your body, when you include all these capillaries. So it's very extensive. All the capillaries go to all the parts of the body. All right. So this is a nice fat question. And normally, what the body does, because the body's got the nerves to move around and put in all parts of the body, and then it's got the blood vessels. Okay, blood vessels with the arteries. Then you have also the veins. All right, and then you've also got the lymphatic system. All this is networks. You know what I'm saying? Of piping, if you will, for lack of a better word, throughout the whole body. And you can imagine they are always kind of sort of organized in bundles. Because wherever you're going to need, every place is going to need a nerve for sensory information. It's going to need a blood vessel, an artery to deliver nutrients. It's going to need a vein to pick up the blood from that area. So what the body does, it kind of bundles them up like that in these neurovascular bundles with, an artery, a vein, and a nerve, fibers. Okay, so it will be carrying a bunch of nerves. So we see the nerve over here, right? So I like these diagrams because they kind of highlight. You see, veins are always bigger because one of the functions of veins is to store blood. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then arteriole is a smaller artery. Okay, it's the next size, leading from the heart. And then, of course, you always have adipose tissue to kind of protect. It's almost like the adipose tissue that surrounds, organs like the kidney, the heart, and so forth. Okay, so that it's kind of bundled up. Everything's bundled up in a nice pipe, and then it goes to those body parts. So that's what the purpose of the neurovascular bundle is, to do one of the main characteristics of life that we talked about in ANV1, which is organization. See, the body has to be really well organized because it's got a network of all these blood vessels, all these nerves. It just can get really messed up in there if it's not well organized. So neurovascular bundles is a way to organize the systems. Right. So the general functions of and features of the blood vessels. Okay. So we talked about arteries. What do arteries do? They conduct blood away from the heart. Okay. Regardless of what kind of blood they carry. Okay. One artery that carries deoxygenated blood would be the pulmonary trunk, because it's going to the lung to pick up oxygen. So the only thing that describes these guys is leading blood away from the heart, right? And towards the capillaries. Capillaries are single cell, single endothelial layer, okay? And that lends itself to what? A single endothelial layer. Why is it not stratified? Why don't you have multiple layers of the endothelium in capillaries?
So things can flow through them.
Yeah, so that you can have filtration and diffusion and stuff like that. If you have a multiple layers, the oxygen is going to find it hard to move out of them. So what the body does is that you have this very thick arteries with a lot of elastic tissue when you start off. Like the aorta, you see it when you go down to the lab right now. It's thick, it's very elastic. Then you move on to muscular arteries, which are smaller, but they have more muscle in them to do that thing we're talking about, constriction and dilation to regulate blood pressure. And then we move on to the arterioles, which are smaller. They're very less smooth muscle and connective tissue and so forth, and they're smaller. And then by the time we get to the capillaries, and we've said it's one single layer of cells, what needs to happen to the blood pressure at that point? Yeah, it kind of needs to go down. If you've got one layer and the blood pressure is coming very high, it's going to burst those arteries, those capillaries. You see what I'm saying? So the network of arteries is designed for that. It's designed to regulate the pressure all the way down to the capillaries, so that by the time you get to the capillaries, the pressure is low enough that it's not going to burst, but high enough that it's going to cause filtration of the substances, nutrients, and stuff like that out. So that's what this is for. And then we will talk about the structure, because I noticed in the next modules you kind of trouble with the layers, because it's got the 3 layers: the adventitia on outside, media, tunica, media in the middle, and intima, which is intimate, meaning the inside is closely attached to the blood. Okay, so think of that when you are thinking of arteries, how they come from the very thick arteries like the aorta to the single layer capillaries. Right? So, blood flows through the heart through those. See, this is what I just said. Those ones, arterioles, and then finally capillaries. So if I was to ask about, the change in structure and function, you'll be able to explain it, right? If I was to ask about the change in structure and function of the arteries as they approach the capillaries, you'll be able to do that, right? Be able to know that. In fact, the elastic arteries, like the aorta, when the heart beats, a lot of blood goes in there and stretches there. The aorta stretches so much that, when it stretches back, it's going to create what's called the dicrotic notch, which we will see very soon when we do the electrophysiology stuff with the, and what is that dicrotic notch? It's almost like the heart is beat another time. Because why? That recoil from those elastic, to maintain the blood pressure, so that because you're still close to the heart, you want the blood to go down. So that dicrotic notch, when there's thick arteries like the aorta, recoil back, it creates so much pressure that it looks like the heart is beat again. So you get a beat, and then you get a little notch, and you will be able to see that. That's their function, to maintain that blood pressure. And then by the time we get to the muscular one, we're now regulating it down. So they are contracting down. And by the time we get here, the pressure has kind of gone down a little bit. And then we have valves at the end of the arterioles that will regulate blood entry into the capillaries. Because blood doesn't just perfuse everything just because it's being pumped. It will only go there if it's needed. So then we'll talk about the function of the arterial sphincters, okay? Precapillary sphincters, we're going to call them. Right? And then, of course, the veins are doing the opposite. But the thing about the veins is that they're not under the direct influence of the beating action of the heart rate. So we have to find other ways to bring that blood back, because it's no longer pressurized from the heart pumping. Okay, so the veins, they will be storing blood. So they have valves that are faced up like this, like the semilunar valves. The semilunar valves that when blood tries to come back down the pulmonary trunk or come back down the aorta, those will fill up. And so the same thing, it's got the orientation of the semilunar valves in the, the veins. And so you have the very venules, which are like capillaries, really. They are connected to the capillaries. And then you go to small veins, and then you go to medium-sized veins, and then you go to large veins. So there's kind of like that 4-step, just like we have the 4-step with the step up, step down, okay, with the arteries. All right, so that those are them, small veins, and then I can get the medium veins here, okay, and then the large veins, all right, and that's how the blood is returned to the heart. And how it's returned without the beating action of the heart, we have the muscles. All these veins are between muscles. So when the muscles contract, they squish on the veins, and then the blood in there will be pushed up, right? And then with those valves, when the muscles relax, the blood tries to go back down, and the valves will hold it back. So once blood in the veins move up a certain direction, it's not going to come back down because those valves will do that. All right?
Is it, when you get spider veins, is that from those valves going bad, or is it your veins actually rupturing?
Yeah, you may get varicose veins if your blood tends to pool. So sometimes it's genetic, and it could do with the valves as well. And then blood kind of pools, and then you get what's called varicose. They're thick ones, and that can cause problems because it may clot. You may have them surgically removed, or sometimes just wear pressure, swabs, so that the blood goes up. Okay, yeah, but it may have something to do with valves, they let blood pull up. All right. So that's number one, the muscle contraction, and then number two, which is what creates the pressure in the veins, is the breathing. When you're breathing in the thorax, what happens? You breathe here, and then the chest expands. All right. So that expansion of the thoracic cavity, when you're breathing in air, it's like a suction. It's like when you're putting the syringe on, so it sucks up the blood because there's less pressure that's surrounding the vessels in this area. Then you know how thick the inferior vena cava is and all these other big blood vessels. So it will, when you are breathing in, you are creating the suction, and then when you are breathing out and the thoracic cavity volume is going down, you're going to put pressure on those blood vessels, and that pushes, it sucks the air, the blood up, and it won't go back because of the valves, and then the compression pushes it further. Okay, so breathing action helps with that too, to bring blood back. That's why when you're in a long journey, what do they say? Like, I'm going to be flying home very soon in December. So it's a 14-hour flight. I'll be sitting down. You can either contract your calves when you're sitting down or walk. So I always do that even when I'm sitting, because you could just die sitting there. And many people have done, not many, but a few people have kicked the bucket, right, sitting on a plane. Because, if your blood is pooling and you're not active and you drink lots of fluids too, you can create a clot, and then that clot will slowly move its way to the heart. And then when it gets to a smaller coronary artery, boom, and that's it. And there's all, they just died, they were just sitting there, doing nothing. That's what killed them. It's bad. Yeah. It has happened a few times, so you should really move around with that. So that's the veins. All right. Okay. So in the exam, not in the exam, in the Lensmark modules, you kind of had trouble with these, layers of the arteries and kind of their functions. So you have the elastic arteries that we talked about, like the aorta is an example of that. Okay, and the tunica adventitia is on the outside. Is the connective tissue, and then you've got a little bit more connective tissue in the tunica intima as well, but it's just got a basement membrane, and then it's got that endothelial lining that is smooth. Okay, the inside of blood vessels is smooth. Why does it need to be smooth? To prevent what?
Clotting.
Yeah, clotting, because if it meets a rough patch, then blood will be stimulated to clot. So it's got to be very smooth endothelial lining. And in fact, this endothelial lining is what continues in the as the single layer of the capillary. Is what I'm saying? Okay, so and then the tunica media will have some elastic tissue. The tunica adventitia is mostly just connective tissue, CT, connective tissue, right? And then the tunica media has got some connective tissue and some elastic tissue. It's got smooth muscle and elastic tissue. Smooth muscle and elastic tissue in the middle layer, right, of the elastic blood vessels. all right? And then the tunica intima, which is the inside, the one that's intimately in connection with the blood. So, or sometimes tunica interna, sometimes they call it, and the tunica adventitia, sometimes called tunica externa. Okay?
Yeah, I think in the module they at one point they referred to
They're calling interna and externa,
like,
and I know that will throw you off a
is that
little
right?
bit. I'm like, oh god. So that's the thing about the thing. It just kind of sort of fluctuates between the two. But it's more intuitive than anything, though. Really, when you see tunica externa, you know that is the outside layer. It will be the adventitia. The interna would be the internal one. Intima too. Intima meaning intimately in connection with the blood. So that's what it is.
Those are the same.
Yeah, so those are the same. Intima and interna, externa and adventitia. The tunica media is middle there. I mean, that's it. Okay? So just know the differences between this middle layer with the arteries as we go down. Okay? So, and then that's, this is just the endothelium and the basement membrane. Just a little bit of connective tissue to kind of hold it together. All right? And then when we move here, we still have connective tissue in the tunica externa or tunica adventitia, right? But we have, you know, less elastic tissue, you know, a little bit more smooth muscle in there, all right? Here we've got more elastic tissue because what we're trying to do is recoil back and push the blood. And here we have more muscle because we're trying to kind of, you know, tone it down and maintain the pressure a little bit in the muscular layer. So you have the muscular layer is a little bigger than the elastic, but you still need that elasticity to come back down, all right? And then the tunica intima will have the same connective tissue, okay, and then endothelium and basement membrane. The connective tissue is just to hold the basement membrane because, again, you know, the basement membrane needs somewhere to attach, and then the basement membrane is where that endothelial lining is connected. Okay, so it's just something to, it's just very thin connective tissue. Okay, same thing. So here we got more muscle, and here we've got more elastic tissue. Okay, and then when we go down to the medium and large veins, okay, you still have the three layers in the veins too. All right, you've got the tunica externa, which is connective tissue, and then you got some smooth muscle. You know, the tunica media. Okay, but you don't have elastic tissue here. You see that? The tunica media of the medium veins and large veins doesn't have elastic tissue there, right? And then you have connective tissue, of course, the endothelium and the basement membrane for the intima, right? And then this is just showing you the valves I was talking about, kind of like semilunar valves in the veins. So veins have the three layers. They've got the connective tissue on the outside, the smooth muscle, and the endothelial lining. Same thing. They just don't have the elastic tissue like the arteries do. Okay? All right? And the arteries have a thicker wall than the veins. And you will see it in the okay? So just know the differences in the middle layer of the elastic arteries and the muscular arteries, okay? And then everything else just got, smooth muscle, connective tissue on the outside, and then the figure lining. All right, so these are them. I showed you a picture first. So the blood vessels, except for capillaries. Why? Because capillaries have only that endothelial lining, right? They all have three layers, even veins too, okay? But veins just have the connective tissue, externa or adventitia, muscle layer, smooth muscle layer, in media, tunica media, and then the tunica intima, which includes the bit of connective endothelial lining with the basement membrane. Okay, so this is the common for all of them, for all the blood vessels, even veins. All right, the tunica intima is pretty much consistent. Have you seen that? Bit of connective tissue to lay it down on, and the basement membrane, like all epithelial tissue is the basement membrane. Remember when we did epithelial tissues in one, we said that they have a basement membrane, one of the characteristics of them. All right, and then the basement membrane, of course, the cells, the squamous cells on the top. Okay, remember the squamous cells which are flat. Okay, because the squamous cells will be the ones that continue and will be the capillary, and you need a flat cell here for exchange of nutrients and gases. All right? So, okay, in the exam, I may ask you to describe these layers and kind of explain why, that is, you know what I'm saying? Talk about why that is. The tunica intima is across the board consistent. Doesn't matter what blood vessel we're talking, okay? Because we need that smoothness inside, and we need the single layer of squamous cells. Middle layer, of course, is going to be where mostly the muscle is, but depending on whether it's an elastic or a muscular artery, you may have more of the elastic tissue and a bit of the muscle tissue. And the muscular ones, you have more muscle tissue and a little bit less elastic tissue. Okay, but it contains smooth muscle fibers and elastic collagen. Okay, except in the veins, right? The veins don't have the elastic tissue, but they do have smooth muscle. Because another thing that I didn't mention when I talked about the respiratory system and the muscular system is also the smooth muscle in the veins can contract. Usually, if you get injured, if you get another traumatic injury and you're losing blood, that's another thing, that you recall more of the blood from the veins, because what do the veins do? They store blood. So your smooth muscle in your veins will start to contract so that it pushes more blood back to the heart. So that's another thing. And also it's involved in moving blood in the veins, because the smooth muscle will contract a little bit to aid in the movement on top of the respiratory system and the muscular system. All right? And then the tunica adventitia, of course, is going to be the connective tissue on the outside. Okay? So the thickness and the composition of layers, right, vary with the blood vessels. The veins have a little bit more of that connective tissue, right? And the ones that contract a lot and recoil a lot, the elastic ones, have less connective tissue, because the more connective tissue you have, what happens? You restrict the stretching and all that. You don't want to do that. It's like you're going against what you're trying to do. Okay, if you have more elastic tissue, then you don't have too much connective, because the connective tissue will kind of stifle the blood vessel. Right? Okay, so be able to explain all these and what are the components of each of these layers, right? Okay? All right, so again, another nice picture of this, showing, you see how the vein is always just so big, because the thing about it is the volume and storing blood. But arteries, they have a thicker wall and they are more round and more open, okay? So that blood is pumped through to kind of help out with the pumping action of the heart. All right, and you can see the tunica intima, media, and externa. All right. So, and then there's another one showing, the thickness. This one compares the thickness, and you can look at it later on a color on the computer. The thickness of the layers between the artery and the vein. You see how they are different. Okay, the tunica media in arteries is bigger, way bigger than the tunica media in the veins, right? And you see the tunica adventitia in the veins, you see how big it is? You see, it's almost twice as big as the connective tissue here. Because the connective tissue, like I say, will stifle the stretching and recoil. Okay? So there is a good comparison of the two. Okay? So large elastic arteries, okay? Thick walled, very large, a lot of elastic, and they're large diameters, like the artery. Like the aorta, you're going to see very now. Because they will be dissecting the heart. Kind of works out nicely today. So the tunica media has the elastic, a lot of elastic tissue. Okay. So the different layer here is the tunica media. Okay, because the outside layer is just connective tissue, and the inside layer is just a wee bit of the connective tissue with the basement membrane and the squamous epithelial cells, and it's consistent throughout. So the differences between the arteries will come here. Okay, so you focus on that. Okay, and tunica media is the elastic fibers, and then the muscular, these are distributed arteries. Right? the purpose of this is to kind of maintain pressure, right? From the pumping action of the heart. That's why you get that dichrotic notch from the arteries when the heart beats, because they kind of sort of beat for the heart a little bit when they recoil. Because they recoil with so much pressure that it's enough to show a little bit of spike in the pressure. Okay, so they maintain, and these now distribute blood, because now what you're trying to do is to harness and control that pressure. So you can control it. That's why it's got a thicker muscular layer, so that it can now distribute, and it will, deposit blood into the arterioles at a lower pressure, more controlled pressure. See what I'm saying? Because again, the arterioles are thinner blood vessels. If the blood has got too much pressure, then the likelihood of them being bursting is also there. And it's called a sort of. So we can say the major function is to control the pressure. You see what I'm saying? Instead of maintaining the pressure, this is kind of controlling the pressure to distribute to the smaller blood vessels like the arterioles, and eventually finally into the capillaries. Okay, so you have an abundance of smooth muscle because you control. The more muscle and power you have, the more you can control. Right? Makes sense, right? Yeah, I like the body because it makes sense, and it's easier to remember things that make sense than things that don't. Okay, so arterioles, of course, smallest arteries. Well, not quite. Because capillaries, they kind of in a league of their own. They're the smallest blood vessels. Okay, and the arterioles are smallest arteries. You see the difference? Because definitely capillaries are smaller than arteries.
They kind of play a role as vein and capillary and artery.
Yeah. So the capillaries are kind of like you can't call them arteries. You see what I'm saying? Even though they're on the arteriolar end, but they're also continuous with the veins. They only have one layer, they don't have 3 layers like the arteries do. So the smallest arteries, you see the difference now? The smallest arteries, so sometimes you may have multiple choice questions that have that kind of sneakiness to them. Okay? They will say the smallest arteries and then they put capillary in there so that you will be attracted to that because it's the smallest blood vessel. Capillaries are smallest blood vessels, but arterioles are smallest arteries. Okay? So, and then of course they have the 3 layers, but very little smooth muscle. They've got smaller diameters, okay, and a few elastic, fibers in there, okay, because these distributing arteries make sure that they will deposit blood at a pressure that these can handle, the arterioles, okay. So that's that smallest arteries, but not the smallest blood vessels. All right, so again, we show you elastic arteries. Again, this the picture we had at the beginning, and then you can juxtapose the muscular arteries. So what would be the 2 main differences between the muscular and elastic arteries? Number 1, size. I mean that you can't even if you're blind, you will see that the size is smaller. And then the other one, of course, is in the middle layer, right? Muscular layer. The muscular arteries have more smooth muscle, right? And then in the middle layer of the elastic arteries, they have more elastic tissue. That's it. So if I was to be sneaky and ask you about the differences between muscular and sleeve, you say those 2 differences, 2 points, right?
Size and what?
Size and the middle layer. The elastic arteries have more of what in the middle layer? Elastic tissue, right? And the muscular layer, they have more of the muscle arteries. I'm answering it as I'm saying. The muscular arteries have more of the smooth muscle. I'm gonna say smooth muscle because it's a smooth muscle. Okay, it's not. If you just say muscle, that's kind of it's correct, but it doesn't tell us what kind of muscle it is because it's smooth muscle in here. Skeletal muscle is what attached to the bones. Okay, so capillaries, they consist of the endothelial lining. In fact, it's the continuation of the tunica intima, if you might call it. That's what it is. Okay, which is just the endothelial lining only of the squamous epithelial cells. So The capillary bed it's like a network of these capillaries that perfuse every square inch of your body, every little area of your body is perfused. If a tissue is not getting blood, it becomes, what happens to a tissue if there's no blood going there? Necrotic, yes, that's the word exactly I was looking for. It becomes necrotic because it's sort of rot, because it's not getting nutrients and all the things. And then they will have to, because if it becomes necrotic and you say, oh, I keep my finger, but it's necrotic, it will infect you systemically, and that's because I mean everything that's bad. That will kill you. Okay? So capillary bed is a network of them, and like I say, it goes up to 60,000 miles, I think, if I'm not wrong. I was reading an article about, you know, if you were to take all the blood vessels and stretch them in your body, that's a lot of miles right there. All in your body. So imagine how much organized all that has to be. Very well organized. Otherwise, it will be chaos in there. It won't work. So what we have is there some you know, because I was talking about those precapillary sphincters that occur at the junction of the arteriole and the capillary. So what we have is that if a certain body part doesn't need a whole bunch of blood, the capillaries in that area are not going to be perfused with blood. So what happens? Those precapillary sphincters will close up, all right? And then instead of the blood going to the capillary bed, it will go straight from the arteriole to the venule. See what I'm saying? So that blood just passes up. So it doesn't just pull up in an area, because you don't want blood to clot. If blood is just pulling up and it's not got no business doing there, it's going to clot and then problems again. Okay? So when an area doesn't need oxygen, doesn't need nutrients, blood will just pass through. And that's the function of these through channels, and I'll show you a nice picture, also called metarterioles. Okay? The through channels are also called metarterioles, and their main purpose is to bypass capillary bed. Okay? If I was to ask the function of metarterioles or through channels, okay, you would say bypass capillary bed. All right? It passes rapidly through, and blood continues on its merry way, right? So function of that is to bypass, and it's because of these pre-capillary sphincters, okay, that are at the junction of the arterioles and the capillaries, okay? Because the arterioles are the last arteries that will be distributing the blood to the capillaries, which are the smallest blood vessels with only one layer, and the pressure is now gone low enough so that the capillaries can handle it. So the precapillary sphincters regulate blood flow into the capillaries. And if that area doesn't need blood, those capillary sphincters will close up, and then blood just goes through the channels, so that it just continues on, right? And you know, this definitely prevents clotting.
So those close up when it's really cold. Keep all of your blood in your trunk.
Yeah, if it's cold, that could happen.
That's why you're
And when you're cold, you know what? Yeah. Do you know what they did? This other guy, it was some guy who was doing some, you know, the things in cold weather, and he bumped his head, and then he fell into a cold stream, you know, with freezing water, and he survived for a long time. Because when you slow down, your metabolism goes down, you pump less blood to the system, because the metabolism of your cells will be slowed down. Okay, so that guy survived for quite a long time. He could have died if it was any other time, because then, you know, his metabolism would have been kept up. So when your metabolism is reduced, that means you need less air. You could almost, you know, quit breathing for a while. He died actually for a while because his metabolism was so low in the cells, because he was dumped in the freezing water, and it snap freezed him. You know, not snap freezing, but it brought down the temperature real quick, that he was able to survive. And now what they do, like maybe open heart surgery and stuff like that, to reduce your need of oxygen in your cells, they make you cold. They lay you in a cold kind of chamber, so that your metabolism is done, so that they don't have to be pumping a lot of blood to the system, because they hook you up to something that pumps blood. When they, like a heart transplant, when they do that, that's kind of cool. I like that. They take it out and they hook you up, and then that thing is pumping blood, but they reduce your metabolism by making you cold, so that they don't have to pump a lot of blood in, so that none of your cells get starved, because you reduce the metabolism.
Isn't it called like bypass when they take your blood out?
What's that?
Isn't it called like bypass or something when they take your blood out?
Bypass is when they, pass something.
Through that machine.
Yeah, when they put it through the machine, they connect it, they bypassed your natural heart, because they've removed it, right? It's off your body, and they're putting another one. So in the meantime, you still need blood to perfuse. So the pump that they actually hook you up to it. Okay, bypassing is when you divert something. You go around something. Like when you're bypassing, the bypass is over the blockage, so that the blocked artery is they just put another one that goes over the blockage, so it bypasses. So that's why they call it bypass. And this one bypasses the capillary bed, because it doesn't go, blood doesn't go there, it will go through the metatable or through the channel. Okay? So, and one of the big things about that is that why you need to have these precapillary sphincters and regulate blood entry to the body parts is that you reduce the chance of clotting. Okay? Because if blood is just pulling up in areas, then the chance of clotting is higher. So that's another very important part of the precapillary sphincters and through-fed channels, right? Prevents clotting. And there's a capillary bed, and you see this sort of openings right here. You see them? Where the cells meet, there's some little openings so that things can kind of sort of filter out. Okay? And if you get injured during inflammation, there are these inflammatory mediators that the body releases, and it increases the gaps between them, so that a whole bunch of white blood cells come out. Okay, yeah, that's what it does. When your blood vessels dilate, when it becomes very red, so that's what happens. Those little holes will get a little bigger, and so the blood vessels will come out. The blood cells, the white blood cells come out, and then they can go and attack the bacteria that's affecting the heart or whatever. Okay, so that's the capillary, just endothelial lining, and there's our metarterial. You see, the metarterial kind of takes blood directly in there. And this precapillary sphincter, see, this is the capillary bed. The precapillary sphincters will just shut down. So this will shut down, this will shut down, and blood just goes straight down. Okay. So it's important for those two reasons we talked about, right? I want you to know about those reasons. Why do we have those through-fed channels? Okay.
So is that what happens with your digestive system, because you don't need blood flow there all the time? Through fair channels.
Whenever there's a body part that doesn't need, like let's say you haven't eaten, there's not a lot of blood that needs to go to your, so those through-fed channels will help to shut blood straight up, okay? You will need a bit of maintenance blood because they are living cells. But when you eat, then it does really open up, right? So that you get a lot of blood going to it. That's why when you eat, you want to go rest or sleep or something. See, because then you'll be doing the digestive functions. But if something happens, like there's an emergency, a lion is chasing you, you quit all that. Those things will close up real quick, right? And put blood to your leg so you can run away from that thing. Okay?
So what
Those
about
aren't the
in
only
shock,
sphincters
though?
that have closed.
What's that?
But those aren't the only sphincters that have closed.
Yeah, those aren't the only sphincters that are closed. Other sphincters are closed too, so that you don't cripple yourself.
So
Okay.
what is happening though during like shock, when you're like blood flow?
During shock, it's like the shock is when there's a lot of pain in the body, and the body can't handle it. So it's like switching off. And I guess you know what that happens when the body goes into shock. It will close up some of those, and it will try to naturally slow your metabolism down. Yep.
Because you're like,
It's a way for you to deal with it, because it's easily just too much to deal with. Like if you have a naked partner or something like that, and they're always in your face, sometimes you switch off, right? You just look this way, and then and they say, "Oh, what did you say?" But so that's just the way of controlling, and the body will definitely go into and those blood vessels will close for sure, because it will reduce, because it's no longer, you know, pumping blood throughout. So the veins, like I said, they get those valves that will prevent backflow. So, you know, venules are connected to the capillaries. They are kind of the smallest, you know, veins. The connected capillaries, they are like capillaries except they are a little larger diameter. Okay, they're just like capillaries, but a little larger. Venules are. And then, you know, it will eventually end up in large venules. All right, and then, you know, kind of like small veins, you know, medium veins, and large veins. Large vein, an example of a large vein would be, yeah, the vena cava is a large vein. You know what I'm saying? So, so that's what happens with that. It's kind of like, you know, venules, you know, like small veins, medium veins. Jugular is another large vein here, yeah, from the head. And did you see the jugular foramen lately? See how big the thing is when we're doing MP1? The thing is like so big like that. Yeah. So that's the jugular vein. So valves prevent backflow. Okay. So with the veins, okay, we will do this deal here. Venules, okay, then small veins. Although it kind of goes to larger, you know, venules. Okay, fine. Okay, but basically with venules, it's still, even if it's a larger venue, it's still a venue, right? So venules, small veins, medium veins, and then large veins. LV, large veins. Okay. Same deal with the capillaries. I mean, with the arteries, we got elastic arteries, muscular arteries, arterioles, and then we got capillaries, which are not really arteries. Okay, we kind of have this sort of four going down, and then we have venules, which are like capillaries, and then we have those three. So it's kind of like the same deal. You see, we can call this the real veins, the small vein, and so forth. The venules are kind of like capillaries. So same deal, all right? So that's kind of something that there was a little problems with in the modules, because the book doesn't kind of make it clear. It talks about these large venules, and then it talks about, you know, the large veins, and then you go, I'm stuck. So yeah, it's the same kind of sort of going up deal. So think of this for the veins, and just like the arteries. So it's the same deal. And then we have the valves, like I said, the flow, and then the pressure. Okay. And then the functions of the veins: store blood, right? And the pressure responsible for the veins, because I'm going to need you to be able to tell me about this. Okay? Pressure is muscle constriction, muscle contraction. Muscle, is that how you stand it?
There you go. That was pretty key.
Muscle contraction, all right? What else we got?
Breathing.
We're going to call them respiratory movements to be kind of, you know, mature about it. Respiratory movements. But breathing is fine, okay? As long as you can explain the things about the pressure going down and going up when you expression inspiration. Okay? And then what was the third thing that we say is responsible for movement of blood in the veins?
Valves.
Well, valves prevent backflow, but they're not really responsible for the actual movement. We said veins have also the middle layer, which is, what's the middle layer in veins?
Smooth.
Yeah, smooth muscle contracts, right? It can push up. So, smooth muscle. This is skeletal muscle, by the way. Okay, you could call it so that we don't confuse things. You know, skeletal muscle, the muscles that are connected to the bone and when they contract. But there's also muscle in the vein itself. When it contracts, it also aids in the movement of blood. Smooth muscle in veins. What's that? Oh, it just pressure in veins, we can call it. Okay, it's a result of skeletal muscle contraction. As a result of respiratory movements, inspiration and expiration. And you can explain that because when you inspire, less pressure in the thoracic cavity, and then it creates a suction, so blood is pulled up, the inferior vena cava. And then when you breathe out, expiration, you contract the chest cavity and you squish onto those blood vessels. You create a positive pressure that moves blood up the veins, the valves with the vein flow. Smooth muscles in the veins as well when they contract. Okay, are you okay? Okay, very good. So because I'm going to ask about that, I'm going to ask about function of the veins. And I'm going to ask about how they go from the venules all the way to the large veins. Okay, I'm going to ask about how the blood comes from the elastic arteries, aorta, all the way to the capillaries too. I'm going to ask about the differences in the tunica media of the elastic and muscular arteries. All right. So media veins, again, we kind of saw them in that first picture when I showed you the muscular and elastic arteries, right? Just tunica adventitious connective tissue, tunica media, which is muscle, no elastic tissue, and then of course the endothelial lining, which includes the basement membrane and the bit of connective tissue. That's it, and that's consistent throughout. And then it shows the folds here, the semilunar, kind of like vein, valves, okay, that prevent blood flow. Okay, so prevent blood flow. Okay, those, okay, prevent blood flow. That's the function of the valves, right? And then what happens when we start to age and do all sorts of good things? Okay, so arteriosclerosis is when those arteries lose elasticity. Okay, when the arteries lose elasticity, it can be a problem. Like in the aorta, when you don't pump blood, more effectively. Remember, the aorta will recoil and then kind of create that dichrotic notch to continue to push the blood. So you start to perfuse your body parts less with oxygen. You know what I'm saying? You could start to see what may happen. You become what are some of the symptoms of loss of elasticity? What would happen to you? It's going to go down, and then what happens when that happens? When your blood pressure goes low? What is one thing that can happen? What do you think happens?
You don't get good perfusion to your extremities.
Yeah, and then what? Then what? I'm talking about something that's like a general thing in terms of your functionality and your need of energy. You kind of become anemic, right? Because, yeah, being anemic is when you don't have red blood cells to perfuse oxygen, so that, because red blood cells carry the oxygen, right? And then oxygen gives you the energy, because you use it to create ATP, right? So if you're anemic, so when you're looking tired, even some people say, hey, you look anemic. You look like just worn out.
Pale.
You're pale, worn out. Because anemia, like anemia is a condition where your red blood cells don't have hemoglobin is not passing the oxygen. So the equivalent of not having blood in it is just like being anemic, because the hemoglobin is not there to give the oxygen. So you become tired. So if you have arteriosclerosis, one of the things is that you're just so tired, you just don't have the energy because you're not pumping enough blood to the system. My God, if you're pumping the heart. You see what I'm saying?
Back.
Yeah, it's like, get that. Okay, you see what I'm saying now? What can happen when you have a certain condition that doesn't seem related to all these other things? You are tired because you're not getting enough oxygen, and then you may get necrotic ends too. You may start to, because then the ends will definitely not be perfused with blood. Your necrotic extremities, loss of feeling and tingling or something like that. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, so because when a patient presents to you and they say, oh, I've got tingling, the last thing you're thinking about is that you may have, loss of elasticity. You know what I'm saying? So you know you have to be kind of like, so you have to know all these things so that you can, especially when you're a medical doctor, that's why they get bombarded with a lot of physiology. You gotta know it so that and how the body works so that you can connect it and then come up with some solution, a treatment. Because there's some things that seem so unrelated and like, oh, how can this cause that? Yeah, it will. See what I'm saying? So elasticity is important. So it's called arteriosclerosis. It's like they are deteriorating the arteries. Okay, so the loss of elasticity in the coronary arteries as well. I mean, it won't be able to really perfuse the heart. The heart won't be able to pump anyway. And then you, by the way, the arteries are not distributing blood properly too. So it's like a double whammy. And then yeah, you definitely become anemic because you won't have oxygen. Okay, so I might say what may be the symptoms, you know, of arteriosclerosis, because you know that arteriosclerosis is loss of elasticity, right? So we kind of ratchet it up a little bit and say, okay, what do you think may happen to the body? What do you think will be the deficits? Right? Now this one is very, it's easy to see what will happen to atherosclerosis is when you have a blockage due to accumulation of lipids in blood vessels. So it becomes occluded, okay? Like, so this is the lumen of the blood vessel, this is the wall of it, and then you start having something that will deposit in there, okay? Sometimes it may even deposit down there too, and all you have is this little gap for movement of blood. So atherosclerotic plaques would be this, and it's mostly lipids when you have a high fat diet, especially unsaturated, saturated fats.
The high cholesterol.
Yeah, high cholesterol, yeah, you know, high cholesterol, and lots of saturated fats. If you take lots of saturated fats, like from beef and so forth, pork, whatnot, okay.
Deep fried Twinkies.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So those are the ones that get really clog up the arteries. But unsaturated fats, you know, like linoleic acid, fish oils, you know, cod liver oil, which is like a fish oil from the liver of the cod fish. Those are good because they are, some of them are even polyunsaturated. Those ones have double bonds in between the carbon atoms on the fatty acid chain. They are kind of active a little bit. They're not as inert as the saturated fats, which can clog up and form arteriosclerosis. So this, of course, will stop the blood from going. And usually, if it happens in a coronary artery, it's kind of like this. This one will give you like a heart attack. You know what I'm saying? Real quick, because or sometimes what happens is this atherosclerotic plaque can break off. Okay, because of the pressure, and then go and really block a small blood vessel in the heart. Then you get a heart attack again. Or a stroke when you don't have oxygen, when a blood vessel to the head, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, gets blocked. Okay, so just know these two conditions and know what may happen. So the symptoms of what may happen here is a stroke or myocardial infarction, you know, which is heart attack. Myocardial infarction is heart attack. I think we'll do it in the next one. We talk about dynamic heart dynamics. Okay. Here you just become generally tired. You get necrotic tissue. You know, and tired. We call it anemic. Necrotic ends. You might do that. You know what I'm saying? Because if the pressure is not there to perfuse the ends, then you know you may get necrotic tingling. Yeah, you know, cell death in the extremities. Call it that, okay? Because you're not having enough to distribute all the blood throughout. Okay, so you know at least two things you can say about arteriosclerosis. On top of telling me what it is, you know what it can cause, and you know what I'm saying. So, because I'm going to ask you about that. You see in the atherosclerotic plaque? Yeah, look at that. Bad, and then of course it's not going to be very smooth, and so sometimes the blood, because the blood is going to be coming under high pressure and trying to force its way through, it could break off a little piece of that atherosclerotic plaque, and then you know you get an embolus, and that it could go anywhere. It could go into the lungs, and it's equally fatal, you know, and it's blocking, so you're not going to get the exchange of oxygen. All right. So pulmonary circulation, okay. The pulmonary trunk, we know about that. From the right side, takes blood to the lungs and back to the heart. Okay, So the pulmonary arteries will split left and right. Right? That's why it's called a trunk, because it will split into left and right pulmonary arteries, right? And then comes back from the lungs via 4 pulmonary veins carrying oxygenated blood. So those are the special blood vessels that carry oxygenated blood. They are actually special veins that carry oxygenated blood. Okay, so and we'll do that in there. So you can see the pulmonary trunk, and then the pulmonary arteries split left and right. Okay, and we'll see this in a little bit. And then of course the 4 pulmonary veins, which are red because they're carrying oxygenated blood. Right? Okay, so the anatomy part of it will go through a little bit quickly because we're going to do that in the lab. All right. And this is the network of blood vessels anyway. And we'll finish off with the circulatory system, but we'll do it in the cat. But we'll be able to kind of sort of equate it to the human, to actual human being. So arteries, of course, carry blood from the left side of the body via the aorta to the rest of the body. Remember when we described systemic vessels at that time? Okay, so the aorta has got the ascending aorta. When it's coming out of the heart, it goes up. It's ascending. When it after that, it curves. So you have the aortic arc. So you might be able to see the arc on your, if they didn't chop it off early, on the hearts that we're going to be cutting right now. Then you have a descending aorta that's going down, which will be the thoracic aorta, then the abdominal aorta. That's it. Once it passes the diaphragm, it becomes the abdominal aorta, and then it goes down, and then it splits into the iliac arteries and so on and so on. Right? So we know about these. I just want you to know how the aorta kind of just sort of distributes blood flow. And then from the aorta, we're going to have branches, right? So the human body is kind of like this. On the right side, you have the brachiocephalic trunk and then the common carotid, and then you have the left carotid artery, and then you have the subclavian. So this is the right subclavian vein under the clavicle. This is the left subclavian vein, and this is the left, and I'll show you a picture in a while, don't worry. Left, carotid artery. You'll see a left carotid artery, and this will be, in the human, that's what happens. It's kind of different in the cat, you'll see. Here you have the right subclavian vein and the right common carotid artery. Okay, and that's how the measure, and this is the brachiocephalic, and you'll be able to see it in some parts that if it's not cut. So this will be the brachiocephalic artery, all right. But on the left side, it just splits differently. Okay, so brachiocephalic, and I will show you a nice picture. Brachiocephalic, and then it splits into the, because that provides the arm and the other parts, and that provides the head. The
So
cephalic part.
you mean right subclavian artery?
Mm-hmm.
You like put vein?
Oh, right subclavian. My God, thank you so much.
And on the left side too.
Subclavian artery. Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. Because we're talking aorta, so it can't be a vein. Great. Subclavian. Good. Oh, I was correct on this one. I was correct on that. But the other one, I just did the aorta. Okay, so good. So that's how it splits, and I'll show you, I will describe it again in the slide. So, and then the descending will consist of the thoracic abdomen, right? So that's how it splits. And then, of course, the coronary arteries will branch from. So the left and right coronary arteries supplying the heart. Remember, we did heart circulation at that time when we said it splits into the marginal and circumflex and anterior, posterior, interventricular arteries. They come from that. Okay, from there. So there it is. See how it turns like that, and then you have the brachiocephalic, and then you have the right subclavian artery and right common carotid. Because it's called common because the common carotid was split into the internal and external carotid arteries. The internal one will provide the brain, the external one will provide the face and the command. Okay? And then from here you get the, from the subclavian arteries, you get the vertebral arteries, the ones that pass through the transverse foramen of the cervical vertebra. All right? And I'll show you a nice picture that shows it in an actual cadaver. So this is an actual cadaver. You can see that the aorta. And this is big. That's why heart surgery is not that hard, actually, because these huge blood vessels. They're not going to be connecting small little arteries, no. They will be connecting huge blood vessels. I mean, you don't even need magnifying glass to see them nicely into that. Okay? So you see how big they are, and then you can see the brachycephalic and all that. Okay? So this is that split we're talking about. And you can kind of look at these later because these are actual cadaver pictures. That's why I like them. Right? So these are the following arteries that branch from the aortic arc. Like I just drew earlier on, you got the brachiocephalic on the right side that will provide the subclavian artery and the right common carotid. But for some reason, the left common carotid has its own branch directly from the aorta. Okay, that's just how it is, okay? And then the left subclavian is got its own branch directly from the aorta. Maybe because of the way it is curving towards the left side, you know what I'm saying? Like that. So that's why those ones have their own branches. But the right side, it will have the brachiocephalic that will provide the subclavian artery and the common carotid.
So is that why when you have a heart attack, your right arm,
I thought it was your left.
or is it left arm?
It's left.
Is it the left side? Yeah, you may have to do that because you know why? Because it's getting blood directly from the aorta. But I think all this deal here is just how things are arranged in the thoracic cavity for space-wise. It's the most efficient for these blood vessels to split like that. Okay, so this is just what I drew that time. And then, of course, the subclavian arteries will give rise to the vertebrals that rise up to go to the head, and they will meet at the base of the brain, at the brainstem, to form the basilar artery. And I'll show you a picture because I'm moving my way up to the brain. Okay, so again, like I said, the common carotid arteries will split into the internal, and then external. So the internal will supply the brain, okay, and the external will supply the face in the mouth, okay, and then so that's that, and then, like I say, the vertebrals will arise from the subclavian arteries, straight up, and they'll go through the transverse foramen of the cervical vertebra, right? And then they'll meet at the brainstem, right at the base of the brain. In the brainstem, they'll meet to form, when they unite, left and right vertebral arteries will form the basilar artery, which goes on the base of the brain, and then it will provide blood vessels branches supplying the brain like that. So the basilar artery will then form what we call circle of Willis, which is in the junction of the internal carotids coming in, and they'll form a circle under the brain to spread blood throughout. Okay, it's a very neat network. Okay, and I'll show you the cerebral arterial circle, sometimes called circle of Willis. Okay, circle of Willis. Okay, cerebral arterial circle because it's under the cerebrum. Okay, so do you see the movement of the distribution of blood from the aortic arc all the way to the brain? Because I want you to know that. I want you to be able to tell me those branches and what they're supplying. It's a nice 5-point question. Okay, so that's the only anatomy part I want you to know. Okay, so you see that vertebral coming from the from the subclavian vein, going through the vertebral foramen. You see that? You see that? And then it will meet under the brain. Right? So I just wanted to show you that. Do I have? Those lines then, right? So those are them, and then here you can see the internal carotid, okay? The common carotid here, and then it splits into the external and internal, and then where they kind of split is called a sinus because it's like a huge area where they kind of sort of meet and then they split. All right? So you see that's the character. You can kind of look at it later to see it. And this is the deal I was talking about. You see from the aortic arc, you get that branch into the brachiocephalic on the right side, and the right subclavian, and then right common carotid. And then right common carotid splits into the internal and external. And then the internal will meet up here, okay, to form the circle of Willis with the posterior cerebral and anterior cerebral arteries. And then, of course, the left common carotid, left subclavian. All right. From the left subclavian and the right subclavian, the vertebrals go up, and then they meet at the brainstem to form the basilar artery, which then comes and joins the circle of Willis. So the internal carotids will join the circle of Willis from this side and from that side. All right. And then, see what happens? Vertebrals come join. You see, over here to form the basilar artery, okay, and then it will spread blood throughout, and then it will form the posterior, cerebral artery, and then these are the internal carotids. They come and meet, and then this is the anterior, cerebral artery, okay, and then this deal here, that's what's called circle of Willis. Okay? Circle of Willis. So there it is, the basilar artery, you see how they meet. This is an actual brain. And this is where they meet, and then circle of Willis over there. And then those are the internal carotids. Alright? And then another picture showing close up. And that's it. Thank you guys, I appreciate it. We'll see you in a little bit. Alright.